Hi, everyone, and welcome back to The Things We Know. We're so glad you're here, as always, because today we are diving into a book that really stopped us in our tracks. And in fact, in season two, when we did our favorite books, this was on our list for sure, and that is Caste, The Origin of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson.
Right. We both read it. It was either 2020 or 2021, right? That we
I
read
mean,
it.
I'm
I
going
feel
to
like it
say, I
was,
feel like I was doing it it was one of the first books I read after the murder of George Floyd when I
yes. And it
really
had
got,
just come out. It had
yes,
just come out. Yeah. I
yeah,
think I read it right after you. I don't
yeah.
know. And it has stuck with us ever since. In
Mm,
fact, I just had it out and someone in my house grabbed it, which is not a bad thing. If you have it there, right? Will you
yes,
hold
I
it
have
up for
it.
anyone
I
watching? Yeah.
right there.
So if you haven't read it, don't worry, because we're going to walk you through some of the core ideas, although we really recommend you read it. And if you have, we hope this episode helps you reflect with us even more deeply.
Yeah. It isn't light reading. However, I will say this. It is one of the easiest books I ever read to understand how we are where we are. I regret this to the core of my being, but after 2016, I did read Hillbilly Elegy in an effort to try to understand. Um, I also grew up in that neck of the woods. I knew so many of the things that J.D. Vance talked about. I knew exactly where he was talking about. I knew all of that area. I grew up right outside of Middletown, where he grew up. And so I've just been searching since 2016 to figure out how did we get here. And of all the books I've read, this book, no question, um, laid it out in a way that, like you said, it sticks with me because it's so easy to understand. It is frightening, and we're going to talk about it, but it is, it's essential because she makes the case that caste, not just race, is the hidden structure that has shaped so much of our American life in the past and certainly in the present. And when we think about, sorry, but when we think about how did we get here? Well, spoiler alert, this has always been us.
Yes. And while we'll get into that, I mean, you can see it in many cultures, and it
Yeah.
we're just feeling the impact of that structure here every day, especially now, about how different groups are being treated: Black Americans, immigrants, disabled people, women. We wanted to unpack what caste really means, how it shows up, and what it asks of us.
Yeah. I mean, I
So,
remember thinking at the end, like, oh, I can't wait for her to tell me what to do.
right.
And it's
So,
not really about what to do, but just learning what this is.
right.
This education alone, I think, can change lives.
I think it's always helpful to like step back and look at structure, and I just keep listening to reminders from people I respect that um blaming and shaming shuts off ears. It doesn't help people learn. So this is hopefully an opportunity for everyone to step back and just look at. So let's get into it. What is caste,
Okay.
right? So in the book, Wilkerson defines it as the invisible system that assigns people value and status. It's not about individual prejudice. It's about an inherited hierarchy.
Yep. Yeah, and we're going to go a little deeper into this, but she compares the US to two other caste systems. I think the most famous caste system, I remember learning about this in school, is India. And
Right.
then of course the other one is Nazi Germany, which we're going to go deep into here in just a few minutes. And again, it's not because it's identical necessarily, but because they do operate in similar ways. There's always a group at the top, there's always a group at the very bottom, and a lot of people slotted in between.
Right. And once that hierarchy is in place, it governs everything, like who gets what kind of job, who gets considered for a job, right? Who's seen as dangerous,
Mm.
who gets the benefit of the doubt, who's expected to serve, and who expects to be served. And like you talked about India, I remember a friend of mine who was born in the States because her parents had to leave India to marry out of caste,
Hmm.
right? And then also, as in my education, as you learn about what happened in Germany and how could people be okay with it, it was like if you got protected by that structure, you didn't really like look out for people that weren't. So
Right.
fascinating.
I mean, one of the things around India piece that was so interesting to me in the book was there was some stories, and I don't have it. We have some quotes later, but um, about the people. There were like professors and doctorates who got that here in the States. They were educated here, but their caste back home was low. And so even if somebody of a higher caste from India walked past them, they would automatically defer to them, even though their education, their knowledge, their standing, so to speak, was different now. It is so in, inbred in their understanding and their belief system in India that it was like it didn't matter how high they rose. And I think it's interesting because it reminded me, and she might even talk about this, how like, again, people, even though a black man was the leader of the free world, quote unquote, he was there were white people who were just they didn't care because he was black. So in their mind, they were still superior to Obama because they were white. I mean,
Right.
again, so much of this book just was like mind blowing.
Yeah, this idea at first, like she kept talking about the bones of the house being,
Mm,
and then also like how you decorate it and design it is like it's like the bones of the house are caste, how you decorate it and design it is like race, right?
mm,
So like the skeleton that we didn't design, but we live in it, it shows up in every room. And she outlines 8 pillars that kind of create caste. And I don't think we're going to get into all of them, but I want to talk about the ones that stood out to us.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so the first one we're going to talk about,
Yeah.
the idea of purity and pollution. The idea
Mm.
that someone, and again, this goes to what I was just talking about in India, someone who is a lower caste is somehow dirty or need to be it should be kept at a distance, right? And so we all see this. We've all had these experiences of who's followed when they walk in a door in a store, who's pulled aside at the airport, who don't we want to live next to? What's the bad neighborhood, right? Like I sometimes get pulled at the grocery store because I walk, and so I will have a cart and I'll have my groceries in it, and we have security because well, that's another story. And I've twice gotten pulled aside by security, being like, "Show me your receipt." And as irritating as that is, I am always walk away so grateful. I'm like, well, at least you pulled aside a white woman. It's not just always you're like, I'm good with that. Like I don't mind,
Right.
you know. Mm,
Oh, I mean, this is the idea that people are seen as dirty or need to be kept at a distance. I mean, we've been seeing it for a long time with the way people respond to homeless,
yep,
or the mentally ill, right?
yep,
Just the way people kind of, I mean, and then obviously we get into just decades and decades of people crossing the street when they see a person of color, or if they see a group of kids that aren't white.
right,
So yeah, that purity and pollution, like if you get
yep,
near it, you're going to get you're unsafe or something. It reinforces that. People talk about bad neighborhoods.
right,
That is
yeah,
such a result of propaganda that people
mm-hmm,
even have that context. And what I've always said, and what I've said as long as people could hear me, is there's more mothers there trying to raise their kids just like you than anything else. Like what makes that, there's less income, but what makes it a bad neighborhood? There's like
let
a lot of
alone
joy there. There's a lot of families there. What are you
a
talking about?
million percent. Let alone the neighborhoods um, are, are not a mixed neighborhood because we have redlined them into areas of town, redlined people into areas of town, and then called it a bad neighborhood. Says who? To your point, like says who? They're all living together because we have segregated it that way. We have made that happen.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. And also like a huge recommendation I have if you're not following her, if you're on Instagram or Substack, is Sharon McMahon. She's a
Yeah.
former government teacher. Her post yesterday was so chilling. Like every atrocity in history begins with someone deciding who counts as human, and I think that
Mm,
applies here, right? Like because once you start, that gets into the next one too. But like once you start seeing someone as less than you, once that really gets into your vernacular, it's
Mhm.
amazing what quote unquote good Christian, God loving people will laugh at and participate in and agree with and teach their children. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly why this was not our topic today. This was not what we
Mm-mm.
were going to record. But
Mm-mm.
I was like you, seeing so much since the big beautiful quote unquote bill, big beautiful bill got
The big
put,
disaster.
the big ginormous disaster. Like this is the focus right now. Alcatrader. I can't say it. Alligator Alcatraz. What do you say? Shark Shawshank. I'm like, good Lord, are you watching Austin Powers? Like you are a cartoon villain.
These are cartoon villains. I
I
keep
mean,
saying
it's
that.
insane. And that's why we wanted to talk about this today because it was again, this is not new news. If you might think we're becoming this. We are just re-becoming this in a very blatant way. This stuff has existed from the beginning of time. But what about
Hmm.
terror as enforcement?
Yeah,
Because
so
I mean,
that's
I'm
another
living
one.
that.
That's the other one. You're right in LA. I
Yeah,
don't know why or when it's coming to Portland, knock on wood. I'm not trying to invite it, but yeah, we've had
it'll
that
be there.
5 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, the idea that violence or the threat of violence is what keeps the system in place. That
Hmm.
is, you know, I mean, if I were to give this administration any credit at all, I don't want to. They've been telling us that since they were running. So
Oh,
people
right,
voted
right.
for this.
Yeah,
I mean, this part hasn't been, so much of this is not a surprise. It was all laid out
correct.
in their document. So this is something they are thrilled about. They
Hmm.
are thrilled about, and they keep saying you should be thanking us for that. We're keeping everyone safe because we are terrorizing anybody who is a threat to you. So the
Yeah.
idea that violence or the threat of violence is what keeps the system in place, that's not just history, that's happening now. The systems are wearing different outfits or no identifying, outfits at all.
Masks.
But
Yep.
they still serve the same purpose. And I keep thinking like this massive budget, like that is going to make this the most highly funded law enforcement agency in the country, but like one of the most in the world, more than
Yeah.
the Israeli Defense um, what does
Wow.
IDF stand for again? Israeli Defense
Force.
Force, I guess. Um, is so frightening. And I keep
Yeah.
thinking, oh, they're just going to have like actual like identifying logos now. That's
Hmm.
it. Like they're gonna like have fancier members only jackets that like allow them to feel more official and look more official.
I mean, you can buy them on Amazon,
We
quite
could
frankly. You can
also
buy
like
that stuff.
we could combine this with a book report on tyranny by
Yeah. Oh my God.
but by what's his name again?
Timothy Snyder.
Snyder. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because that's obeying in advance. If they look official, people will like right now, people are really kind of trying to be like, what the fuck, show us some ID, like show us a warrant. What are you doing? And sometimes like it has that effect, especially because of caste, that when people show up looking official, people just go ahead and obey.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
the terror is what does it, right?
so Monday, again, we're recording this. It'll be out in so it'll be a couple weeks ago, and it made some news, I think, probably not enough. But yeah, like military trucks rolled into MacArthur Park, which is a park maybe mile and a half from my house. And this is a park where they had camps. And the kids were running with their camp counselors to hide. I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that LA is quieter right now. And especially downtown LA, we have the fashion district, we have the jewelry district. Like we have these districts where normally a lot of people are out and about, and traffic is less. It's not quite COVID traffic, but it is definitely less. Like people are staying home. They are fearful that to leave their house. So if that is not ruling by terror, I don't know what is.
11-year-olds are running food carts so that their parents don't get nabbed. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm and then just the raw footage of watching people who are going to work getting chased down in fields or at Home Depot or right outside their homes in front of their kids.
Going to their immigration hearings that they are
Mhm.
supposed to do by law. They're going to follow the law, and they are either getting swiped on the way there, or their case is being dismissed while they're there. And now that it's being dismissed, now they're here illegally. So they get pulled out. As soon as they walk out of the courtroom, they get pulled and taken away.
So this part is sort of the twist, right? Because they of course got a lot of people to believe that they were only going after like
Criminals.
the horrendous criminals, like because honestly, it's a misdemeanor to be here illegally.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a crime that warrants being nabbed off the street or being like
Correct.
locked up, actually. So that's been all bullshit, which we obviously knew it would be, but some people are acting surprised and they didn't want this, and this is not what they voted for, and this is going too far. We just wanted all the bad ones locked up. But like the terror comes with putting a judge in the slammer for
Right.
allowing somebody the dignity of showing up legally to do the right thing and being shown where he can leave safely. And then she got thrown in the slammer. Which was that in Wisconsin or was that in
That was
Minnesota?
Wisconsin.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, it's so sad that all of this is such a blur. It's just the terror. The terror, it also comes through in the joking. Like it just,
Yeah.
the amount of jokes that were happening while this bill was being passed, that again, we haven't even gotten into that, like the caste there, right? Like
Yeah.
the caste system there of we've just had the highest distribution of wealth from the poorest to the most wealthy in the history of this country. And that we just passed something that will take away healthcare from isn't it like 11 million people, and that's conservative. I think some people are saying more than that, but I'll say the most conservative thing, which is 11 million people. And that the wealthiest people not only are getting this massive continuation of a tax cut, they're also adding in things like if you own a tanning bed or if you own a private jet, or it's actually just comically extra.
Yeah.
And so if that isn't caste, I mean,
Right.
that's so bizarre. And then, there's like a senator who's total, I think MAGA party senator smoking a fat cigar, celebrating afterwards. There were some that were rightfully
Oh, I love the
shamed.
ones that were praying after they took away
Oh my gosh,
healthcare from
but the
people
guy
and
is like
children.
celebrating with a fat cigar, saying like, "Oh, I don't think it's that bad," and like really feeling really good about what he did. It's bizarre, and it really speaks to the amount of really wealthy people that are representing, quote unquote, representing people aren't really at all. They're representing the wealthy, and they're kowtowing to them. And that is, again, like we now not only had it and we were trying to overcome it, we have it reinforced from the top down, and all in service of the wealthiest people.
Well, and it is funny because it's like, oh, people are starting to notice things a little bit differently.
And they won't, because they designed it well to like not really kick into effect till after the midterms. But
Right, like it's getting a lot of press right now, quote, not press, but like a lot of attention right now. But you're right, like a lot of this won't happen until after the midterms, and then they're of course going to turn around and blame it. I mean, they always blame it on the Democrats, but they're going to blame it on us. And that's just the thing. This is cast on steroids, but the reality of it is what we have accepted as normal for all these years is actually just structural reinforcement of caste. They're not hiding it anymore. They're
they're just
putting it right
hiding it.
out there.
They're just hiding it. They're exploiting it. They're going to the
Yeah.
lowest caste, convincing them that they're there for them. And people have voted against their own rural hospitals, against their own healthcare, against their own safety, against their own health, and access to safe air and water,
Yep.
and reasonable warning,
Yep.
of things to come. So it is uh, an incredible feat.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, moved so
No.
much. Back to this book. One thing, like one thing that we keep coming back to is this question: what happens when you realize you have a role in the system? When like what's the role you've inherited? Maybe you didn't ask for it, but you still have one.
I mean, it's the reason I read this book because
Right.
I wanted you and I did both did deep dives after the murder of George Floyd to go, okay, we don't want to just be anti-racist. Or not racist. We want to actively be anti-racist, And so that is one of the reasons I read this book. But that's just it. Like, how do you respond to, it's easy to be like, not all white people. That's not me. That was the past. I mean, I don't even think you could say that was the past anymore. It is so very clearly back and loud and proud. But still,
That's bizarre too, because they were so sick of being called out for it that they
disowned it.
they went they retreated into caste with their money and power, and then they came back to like squash everything that was making them feel like they were being called racist, just to be overtly racist. Because
Right.
they actually had the power and the standing to do it. Fascinating.
And again, it's blatant, but this system has been beneath the surface this entire time, and I guarantee you there's still things we don't know that are operating beneath the system. Again, defining access, defining opportunity, even safety, like we just were talking about. And it is going to continue if you don't understand what is happening.
This brought up a lot for me reading it. I was, I mean, upper middle class, like that's how, when I look back at it, that's pretty accurate. We did it. Like, we didn't have a lot of wealth, but our needs were met.
Mm-hmm.
We were doing fine. And we were raised to be of service, to help others, to care about refugees, be really aware of that in Southern California. We fostered my sister from Vietnam. And so many immigrants, like I remember through church, but like with my dad, like setting up beds and bringing food and clothes to families that had just, immigrated. And we had a strong message to not think we were better than anyone. So you could stop there and be like, yeah, yes. Right. But
Right.
even with those values, like, I realize now the dissonance. I realize it now. And I
Mm.
realized it before today and before reading this book. But I think
Right.
it's like a long game of deconstruction when you realize it. Like, at the time, I was benefiting from the very structure we were helping people survive. And I don't think we did a lot of yes, but it was implicit. And
Sure.
there was probably, I mean, obviously there's so much white savior stuff mixed in. When I did Jesuit Volunteer Corps after college, it was mostly white college kids. And we were really aware of that, how to go in and be humble and partner with and have it be an exchange. But we were still mostly white kids from a college education doing that work, right?
Right.
Peace Corps, same thing, right? So
Yeah.
there's like great intention and effort to try and address this very thing, but you're still benefiting from I got to opt to do that.
Right.
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 So reading this was another opportunity, like reading White Castles, or, even There Are No Children Here, back in the 90s when I read that. I think that was in the 90s. And that was Chicago, right? Like that was Cabrini Green.
I'm not familiar with that book. Oh, if it's so Cabrini Green, then yeah, it's Chicago.
Yeah.
Yep.
So like that whole transition of living in DC and working with, the kids who were the direct results of all of Reagan's cuts and all of that was the beginning of that. Right. But reading Caste kind of like brought that all back for me. Was that like, wow, how you think you're like, devoted to community, sorry about the dog, community service and social justice. You're still in the benefit, you're still in the bubble of being, in a place to be able to do that.
Absolutely. Two things are true, right? Because I mean, we are watching the highest caste right now have the ability to give healthcare to people or take it away. So while I hear you and I think the awareness is incredibly important, there's still something to be said for the people that are doing that work, right? I mean,
trying. I mean, in general, you always
exactly.
think nonprofits should be trying to work themselves out of a job if they're really, really going for their mission and not just trying to forever make a career out of being a good person.
Right. No, I mean, absolutely true. I just want to acknowledge that that's there. It's not inherently bad that, people with privilege are going in and helping others, right? Because, but it's
how do we change it?
bad if you don't know. Yes, if you're not aware. And I think the awareness is really important. And so you're right. Like it challenges us to sort of re-examine where we've stayed comfortable. You know,
Right.
we're not going out there and doing it of our own accord. We're doing it under the auspices of Jesuits or, you know, whatever it might be, right?
Right.
All right, so let's talk about now, which is why we're doing this. And we have some brutal quotes from, again, Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent by Isabel Wilkerson. Cannot, cannot stress hard enough that you should read this book. Okay. Um, Again, clearly, these the systems that she talks about are not gone. They are here, they are strong, they are loud, and they're just not even being hidden anymore. They are just out front.
Mm-hmm. I I'm just in a pause of the news of the past few days. I think we
Yeah.
texted each other this morning. Like it is it is overwhelming. It is
Yeah.
overwhelming. Like the horrific floods. Like it is
Mm.
alone just so much to just hold the grief of these parents and these people who are looking for their loved ones. And amidst all that, the rest of this horrifying news is still coming at us in waves. It's like, it's just, we can't
It
hold one
never
tragedy.
stops.
We can't hold
Never
one
stops.
tragedy. It's
Yep.
so bizarre. And there's still the horrible deaths of those people who were murdered, you know, by a terrorist, even though he's not being called a terrorist, which is bizarre.
The politicians in
In
Minnesota.
Minnesota. Yeah.
Yep. 4 people.
And we're seeing it with, like, especially in terms of this book, right? We're
Yep.
seeing it in how migrants and foreigners are being treated: increased raids, surveillance, mass detentions, families separated, children in cages. Again, it's heartbreaking. It's systemic. It is cruel beyond cruel. And it's the point, and that's what they enjoy.
And I want to take this moment. You and I talked about this. You know, not that I think most of our listeners are on our page, but I don't want a whole load of whataboutism. Because I also know people on the left that would what about this? You know, what about Obama? What about Biden? I did it again. What about Biden? And so I wanted to give a little context here. So as of this moment, Obama holds the records for the most deportations. His The peak per year, and I don't have the year exactly, sorry, was 438,000. Biden, initially slower, enacted a major policy pivot in 2023 to 2024, hitting a 10-year high of 271,000 deportations for the year 2024, surpassing at the time Trump's peak and rivaling Obama era highs. And Biden's era deportations were border returns, echoing older enforcement models, but criminal offenders remained a focus. Now, here's where it's shifted. There's a notable shift from criminal suspects to non-criminals. Pre-May, 44% of that had been arrested had criminal convictions. Post-May, only 30% did, meaning around 44% of the people that are being arrested, I call it kidnapped, now are individuals with absolutely no criminal record. So, yes, Biden and Obama also did mass deportations in a different way, right? Um, I said I wasn't going to say this, but I was talking to Darren about this the other day, and he said, this says, right, a lot of what Obama and Biden did was turning people away at the borders. Not as many people are coming to the borders these days. And so, in one way for Trump to hit his 1 million a year, which is what he has outright said he wants. And let's not give Stephen Miller his due, because this is Stephen Miller's blueprint, no question. Is going into fucking LA and kidnapping people off the streets. Like, one of the neighborhoods they're in is where one of Charlotte's very best friends lives. And and the thing is, it doesn't matter whether they are here with papers or not. He's trying to get rid of birthright citizenship. He's trying to get rid of all of this, right? And he's made all of these people, and that's why the lowest caste, right? That's why Alligator Alcatraz, there's fucking merch for. You know, people think it's funny. They're pulling us on the side of the road in Florida and taking pictures. They're talking about how many meals the alligators get to have. I mean, are you fucking kidding me?
Well, it started with with lies and propaganda, because, and it's really hard to find the actual stats now, but we have them. But because Department of Justice has removed the pages that proved that, I mean, less than, I want to say like less than it's like less than 15 or 20% of all violent crimes are even committed by non-citizens. Largely, they're
Right.
committed by
Mostly white men.
males. Yes.
Yeah.
And the most violent crimes, especially
Yep.
of sexual nature and of a pedophile nature.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Epstein.
alone, like, yeah, what I really hate is when we try to speak up for the humanity of what's happening and for the truth of what's happening. And when I say we, are anyone who's like not all for just locking up all immigrants, because who is, I can't even imagine, is when people say, well, don't you care? What about Lake and Riley? What about, I can't remember I should remember the first name of the poor victim, and the mom's name is the same name as my mom.
Mm.
And so what about that? Like, those are horrible incidents. In any case, I still want someone to bring me one actual case of a drag queen or a trans person in a bathroom actually committing those crimes. If anybody hurts anybody and in a violent way, they should be locked up. No question. But saying that, like, oh, that person with blue hair did that, everyone with blue hair now needs to be under suspicion and we have the right to just disappear them, is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And that's what's happening, is the dehumanization. And then then the mocking and the humor around it, where like systemically, like that's what happens. Like, good people, and it's what happened in Germany, right? Good
Mm-hmm.
people, who, quote unquote, who think they're good people, think they're on the right side of what's legal, or what's, because they've been scared and exploited, will go along with that and start to enjoy it. And it's so inhumane, and it really, it takes actual humans, dehumanizes them to a lower place of not even feeling like anything for them, for their humanity.
And let's take a minute to show a real clear indication of caste. Epstein files, apparently the list doesn't exist anymore. These are fucking men. We know Prince William. There's pictures of Trump. There's uh, pictures of RFK has said he's been on that plane. Like, all these men who are very clearly tied to a man who ran a pedophile ring. Apparently, Pam Bondi has now said there's no such list. Diddy gets off pretty much scot fucking free. Now, if that is not caste, I don't know what is. I literally do not know what is. Those are actual criminals. There is a criminal in our White House. And not, I know. And, here's the thing. We are under stress. We are a society under stress. I think it's self-made, but that's right. Like what you're saying, right? They're trying to find scapegoats. And what we've done is we've told poor white people that people of color are taking your jobs. People of color are defrauding the system. And so then white people go, oh, okay, well, then we've got to get rid of them. They're all criminals. We have told them who to blame and made them a lower caste. And so even though from a educational standpoint, from a financial standpoint, they might be in the same, if not lower, in terms of a bit of money and so forth. And yet all of a sudden they're still better than. It's still funny.
Yeah. This quote from that recent post of Sharon's was that, if you ever wondered how Hitler did it, how he convinced ordinary church-going, family-oriented, law-abiding citizens to go along with his plans, it began with dehumanizing people. Brene Brown has been saying that for years too. Yeah, let's talk about Hitler.
Let's talk about that. All right, so we want to give some actual quotes from Caste, because if this is the part, like, again, this whole book blew my mind, but this was the part that I thought I had to reread this chapter because I just couldn't believe it. So we got some things. This is from some key excerpts from Caste in chapter 8. And these are all quotes from this book. In the early 1930s, as Nazis were solidifying power, they began researching how the United States institutionalized racism. They sent researchers to America to study the Jim Crow laws and the American immigration policies that were already rooted in belief in racial hierarchy. They were impressed by the United States' ability to turn pseudo scientific racism into law, especially the banning of marriage between races in many US states. A 1934 meeting of Nazi legal scholars specifically referenced American laws as models, particularly Virginia's Racial Integrity Act of 1924. What the Nazis found too harsh in their own proposals, they noted America had already done. So when we say,
Yay, us.
oh, yeah, huzzah, the thing that blows my mind, and it keeps going over in my head every goddamn day when I hear people say we're turning into Nazi Germany. Nope. Nazi Germany learned how to turn into Nazi Germany by coming to America and figuring
Yep.
out and learning our laws. So we're just
Inspired.
turning back into ourselves.
Inspired. Yeah.
Ugh.
I want to just support that with this. Like, she was noting that the Nuremberg laws, which institutionalized racial discrimination in Nazi Germany, drew also from us, right?
Mm.
They examined how the United States, and I want to particularly bring this up because of a speech our dear vice president just gave about,
Mm.
was it called like heritage citizenship?
Yep.
Nazi scholars examined how the United States used blood, quote in quotes, to determine race and adapted it to determine who would be considered Jewish under their new laws. So like originalism with the Constitution doesn't want to like regard any amendments and looks
Right.
at the fact that only white males were considered citizens and women would be protected the closer they were to it, right? Women like wives and loyal servants and things like that, but really truly did not include anyone who didn't have white skin. And so he gets dangerously close to just actually being there when he says heritage citizenship, because that really opens the door with this court and, you know, useless Congress to say, you know, we're not going to protect anyone who isn't isn't a direct descendant of someone who fought in one of these like civil wars or came over on the Mayflower.
Do you remember the good old days? And I'm using that with high sarcasm. When Robert Bork, who was an originalist, tried Reagan put him up for the Supreme Court, and that shit got shut down fast.
And
And
now we
and
got a
here we
bunch in
are.
there
We got a whole bunch of them. Whole
because a
bunch of
guy
them.
named Paul Weyrich and Leo, what's his name? Leonard Leo, along the way have been quietly working in the background
Mm-hmm.
to help that
So that's my
change.
point. Again, that's the whole point of this is. This is not new news to America. We are
Mm-mm.
just getting back to our goddamn racist ass roots.
Yep, it's the structure protecting itself, and it's terrifying to watch it. It's just awful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's mind blowing.
So, if you're listening, you're already seeing it, or if you're listening and willing to read this, you're going to see it, right?
Yeah.
So, it's like, how do we start to not be complicit once we are aware of it?
Yeah.
So for
Yeah.
me, like I feel like reading Caste maybe didn't change, but it helped remind me how
Yeah.
I see my role. I think it's hard to do anything without speaking to it. Otherwise, I feel like I don't know. It's not like like me is suffering and not going like, you know, it is going to help anyone. I know that in every part of my life. But if I don't speak up and like use my voice, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable, we got a lot of those reminders during the last election. It was like,
Mm.
stop talking to people who already agree with you, or don't think you can convince strangers because you won't. It's the people that you already know well that you really
Yeah.
need to speak up with. And that has been increasingly, you know, what I do, and learning to do it without dehumanizing them.
Correct.
Right, with that, because
Yes.
then like the walls go up. I think is a start, and it's constant. Let's go back to what's true. And there's a great article that Brennan just sent me. I can't even remember what it's called. It was in the Atlantic this week. That's like, where are we if we can't even agree on what's true?
I mean, what didn't we do an episode called What Are Facts?
What are
Like at the
facts?
beginning of
Yes,
this
I feel
season?
like we need that like once every
Yeah.
few months.
Fucking hell, man. Yeah, well, clearly I'm not one to be quiet. I can practically screaming through this entire pod. But you're right. It makes me ask, like, okay, how do I expand my sphere of influence, right? You know, you and I both know people who are just never going to speak up. So I like people that I'm never going to change minds on the right. I am letting them go. And to your point, it's about talking to the people that are giving us an opening. And the reality of it is, with the passage of this disastrous bill, even though people may not feel the pinch of it exactly until after 2026, it is imperative that we keep it on the forefront of people's minds, everything they are about to lose, how they are going to feel this. Because as they start to realize that they're losing their insurance, as they start to realize that food isn't showing up on the shelves because the farmers are going to go on strike, as they start to realize, oh shit, we do pay for tariffs, they are kind of going, wait, what? And when you can do it, as you said, without dehumanizing and coming to them and being like, let's have a discussion, let's talk, call them in versus calling them out, right? That's where we're going to get the movement. That's where we're going to get the momentum. There are people on both sides that we just have to let go. It's those again, if we're thinking about a caste system, right? There are these people in the middle that are starting to understand what they did, what they voted for, that they think that they didn't think they were voting for. Those are the people to have these conversations with in a nice, measured way with
Yeah.
facts.
And I think it's really important to mention as often as we can, and she does get into this a little bit, but the the most textbook way of going about this, in case you're like, no way, like this is not, in case you're questioning it, in every authoritarian regime that was successful, you convince people to question and distrust media,
Mm-hmm.
science, and educators.
Mm.
And we are way past that already. It's
Yeah.
frightening.
Yep.
And if you think, no, 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 I watch things, do you? Like, where do you get your news? Do you get it from multiple
Mm-hmm.
sources? Huge plug for Ground News, because it will
Yeah.
like take the exact same thing you think you heard about and you're wondering, and it'll tell you accuracy, and it'll tell you which news sources are leaning right or left, or staying pretty neutral. I'm not into, it's not like there's not some conspiracies out there that make me go, but like, really truly, before you start to feel your emotion making you believe something, step back and ask yourself, like, how, when they control all the branches of government and they've gotten everyone to distrust media, how could this story still have gotten out if you're hearing about it that you don't believe? Like, you know what I mean? Like, just
Mm.
ask yourself, like,
Mm-hmm.
what's causing you to believe or not believe something? And then like, really truly, do you think people gave their entire lives and a bunch of money and their time away from family to study science because they wanted to trick you? And like, I saw this other thing. It's like, why do all people who go to college vote for Biden?
I
Like,
saw that.
no, it is it is not that. It's like, when you expose people to truth and history and economics and injustices, sometimes they end up voting more left than more populist than they would have, right? Like, because they're
Right.
actually like expanding their perspective. It is not to say that I'm someone who's like super happy with any one party right now, because I'm not. I
No.
am really devastated by things happening on both sides that got us to this place.
Yep.
And there's beautiful signs of ways to get through this if we can like think for ourselves.
And again, having these conversations, especially if it's family and friends, and quite frankly, that's who it has to be. Because you're right, we're not going to change the minds of strangers.
Mm-mm.
It's amazing to me because I am really using my Instagram, not the pod, but my Instagram for advocacy, almost 100%. And it is amazing how many white men want to dip in and tell me I'm wrong, and I'm like. First off, why? And second off, like, what do you, oh, am I all of a sudden gonna be like, oh, so and so 567 with 4 followers, I'm going to believe him now. Like, so we're not, it has to be the people that already love us, that already have some sense of know, like, and trust factor. That's how we're going to have the move the needle. But those are also the most uncomfortable conversations to have. You know this more than I do.
Mm-hmm.
And that uncomfort, that discomfort, without shame, without shaming them, without feeling bad that we're having these conversations, stay there. That's how we move the needle.
I saw a conversation between Senator Chris Murphy, and it was either the Bulwark or Pod Save America. I can't remember which. And he was like, it's really sad that they're like a lot of these newer, far right in the Senate, they really believe that the left is out to ruin this country, and they feel like they're doing their constituents a solid, even if they don't appreciate it, on like saving from these lunatics. And it just cracks me up. So like when and where I can't get into it, but where I can be like, heterosexual woman married to a man for 30 years, raising 3 wonderful white men. Like, I am not some whatever you picture. I wish I was. That'd be more fun and interesting. But you know what I mean? Like, what do you picture? Like, in this world of people that go to these protests because, yes, we love this country. We're not happy with our government right now, but go to these protests because we believe that it can be better for everyone.
Yep.
What do you picture we're doing? We are not burning down our cities.
No, we're not burning the flag. We're not burning our bras. We're not doing any of this
And
bullshit. Like,
this idea that cities are these just dens of like these dens of
inequity.
sin and
Mm-hmm.
horrible,
I
like
wish.
oftentimes the reason people end up voting more for people, even when these things don't affect them, like I'm not on food stamps, but is because when you coexist, when you
Yep.
cohabitate with people at different castes, right? At
Yep.
different levels of income than you and different levels of socioeconomic status. I hate to
Yep.
say it, but like that's, I guess, the best way to put
That's
it.
caste. Yeah.
You're much more aware. Your empathy is much more present, and you're much more aware of it. Really, like you can build taller walls around your house, but there's like, how happy is your life going to be if people around you are suffering and don't have access to like basic things like healthcare? So, or healthy food and air and water. Like we have to coexist. There's one planet. We have
I
to
mean,
coexist.
we, yeah, wah, wah. No, you and I have had this conversation before. Darren and I figured that out, as I'm sure you did, a long time ago. When we looked at like his grandma who never left teeny tiny East Liverpool, Ohio. And so she just bathed in the beliefs she always had because she never went outside of her neighborhood, quite frankly. And it was like, I mean, we grew up in Dayton. That's not a metropolitan, and we were in the suburbs at that. But certainly moving to Chicago, my friend Christy and I, we've been doing a lot of content together on Instagram. And I was asking her the other day, we know each other from living in Rogers Park. Rogers Park is still the most diverse neighborhood in the entire country.
Mm,
Every ethnicity, every country lives in Rogers Park. And so that's where my kids grew up, and whatever. That's a whole other pod. I think Liam talked about that a little bit around the idea of like, okay, well, you're still pretty steeped in being in around white people. But I mean, I just wish people would travel, they would get outside of they say we're in a bubble, but
yeah.
they're in a bubble. That's why they believe the way they do. And
Yeah.
again, I don't say that to shame them. I just say like, oh, I wish you could just come here and see the
And you
gloriousness of
can see that
humanity.
it's fear and
It is
indoctrination.
fear,
And
absolutely.
yeah, no, we could go on and on.
I know, I know. Okay, so the song I picked today is called 10,000 Years, Pieces Now, from a band called Live. This album, Mental Jewelry, came out in 1991. I was a ginormous fan of Live at the time. I loved this fucking album, played it to the all the time. It even has a lyric in one of the songs about Desert Shield. That's how old it
Mm,
is. And the thing about this album is we could literally quote something from every single one of these songs. And I say that as another reflection of, yes, that's only 1991. I say this as another reflection of this is not new news. This is who we have always been. We hid it for a while. We hid it under privilege. We hid it under um, uh, an economy that was doing well. We hid it under a false belief that Roe v. Wade someday would become law. You know, it's all of it was a facade. All of it was ephemera. And we are living proof right now that this is who we are. Before I quote it, I feel like you want to say something.
I do. Thank you. Thank you for noticing.
You're
So it's
welcome.
always good to be on camera because we can read each other.
Yep.
I may have told you this privately, like not, in these kind of recorded conversations, but my sister-in-law is out from Germany. Her husband and kids are, German citizens, and she's dual, and they're also journalists. And she was, in a different context, not about any of this. She was referring to, and I relate to this as the youngest, like, I'm not good with transition. I like change, but I'm not good with transition. And we were talking about like having older siblings move away and things change. And I said, that's interesting. And I brought us back to political conversations we'd been having, because obviously traveling out here, so much was happening around that time. Iran got bombed, and all that. I said, that's interesting because I have to love transition. That's my whole job, transformation. Like,
Right.
being in the thick of it, it's not pretty, but it's like where the beauty really is, And I said, and interestingly, this country is in one right now. And she said, yeah, but what are we becoming? And I said, that's where I don't see it that way. I think we're finally seeing what we are, and we have a chance to transform it, because we can really, and it really brings it back to this. Like, if you haven't really looked at the bones of this and the structure of this, it's why something we thought was so ironclad was so fragile. So it's a chance. It's like, it's been an idea that we have never achieved.
And it's interesting when you say bones, that feels so sturdy. But when she refers to it as a skeleton, maybe it's just where I am in my life right now, but like a skeleton feels very fragile. A skeleton doesn't have the bones and the blood and all the things, right? And I mean, it has bones, but it doesn't have the blood. It doesn't have all the stuff.
But it's the strongest thing in the body.
It is, but you can break a bone really fucking fast, really easily.
But we can't break this caste very easily. That's, I think, what she's saying is like, it's like you can get down to it, but the bones take forever to deteriorate.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I guess in my mind, I'm going like scary.
If you think of like a house structure, sometimes that's all that's left after a fire.
Correct. Yes,
that's a horrible image to give you. I'm sorry.
Palisades, so I know that to be true. Yeah, no. I hear
but
what you're saying.
What you're saying. I see what you're saying too.
Yeah, I guess you're saying it as it's strong, and we can build from here. I'm thinking of like we have to break some shit to be able, and I do think we're in a moment.
Bones are breakable. Yes.
Yeah. I just feel like there's some shit that needs to be broken, mainly the caste hierarchy, the caste structure. All right, so again, the song is 10,000 Years. Parentheses, pieces now by Live. It says, selfishness and separation have led me to believe that the world is not my problem. The world is not my problem. I am the world, and you are the world. And yes, I am the world, and you are the world. And if all the ignorance in the world passed a second ago, what would you say? Yay? I'd say yay.
Yay.
Huzzah.
What would you say? The lyric is so powerful. Thank you. And people have asked me this, why we don't play the songs. Copyrights is the song. We have a lot of respect for these people. But we want to leave you with that image, right? Because you are the world. You're not separate from what's unfolding. You're not like quietly watching and going, oh, I wish it was different. I mean, you might be, but you're part of it. And that means that you do have power. And with that comes, once you know something, you're responsible, right? You have some responsibility.
Were you going to quote Spider-Man there for a second? With power comes great responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility. I think you were. You were this close.
But I think that's actually like goes back to JFK too. But anyway,
I was pulling in Marvel.
Yeah, that's so good. I do pull in Marvel a little too often.
No, not nearly enough, quite frankly. Yeah, I mean, this. I don't think this was a tough one. I mean, it could have been. But the reality of it is, again, and I'm going to hold the book up for anybody that's watching, Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent. Is that right? Yes, by Isabel Wilkerson. It is a tough topic that is easy to read and easy to understand. She is a gorgeous, gorgeous writer. And so if you are sitting around thinking, how the goddamn have we ended up here? Read this book. Go get this book now. I get it. It's not a beach read, but this is how you understand how we got here. And with knowledge becomes power. So when you understand how we got here, then you understand how we can get out of this. You can understand your place in it, and you can start to make decisions about how you want to be part of this, right? This is overwhelming. We talk about this all the time. It is designed this way. Stuff is coming at us fast and furious. I mean, normally the week after 4th of July, which is when we're taping this, is like low season. Nothing's happening. The news barely has anything to cover. No, it is just boom, 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 boom coming at us. It's
Tidal wave after tidal
designed
wave.
tidal wave after tidal wave. It is designed that way to exhaust us. So you don't have to be Carrie and I. You don't have to be out on the streets marching. Write a postcard, write a letter, have a conversation with your family.
And
Join
honestly, like,
Indivisible or 50501. Give money to the ACLU. Like there's lots of ways to do this, to feel in action. Because I believe, in my experience, I think yours is too, being in action helps quell the overwhelm a little bit because
right.
you feel like you're doing something.
And the thing is, like with anything, whether you're talking about a relationship, um, a mistake that you want to
Mm,
correct, but like repair is such an important part of like just human development and
yeah.
self-awareness. And the repair needs to happen, and you can be part of it. And it's really, really slow, but it begins
Mm,
with noticing. And once you notice it, then you got to speak truth to it. And once you do that, you can't refuse to notice that the cracks are there. You can't pretend they aren't. And so the more of us that speak to that, the more we're going to be able to repair it. And there's way more of us than there are people that like want to stick with this. Otherwise, they wouldn't be using terror
yeah.
to like try and they desperately to hold on to it. And I think it's calmer. It comes with knowledge and noticing and then speaking to it. So whatever that is, like Lisa just made a million great suggestions. Community and connection and joy is great resistance, but so is just noticing and educating yourself.
Yeah, you can't unknow what you know. All right,
Mm-mm.
everyone, we will be back next week. But in the meantime, please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep looking beneath the surface.
Mm.